Hey guys, what's up? It's Merc here from Polish Games. Today we're going to do a little bit of a board game banter, which is basically I just want to talk about a certain board game and a certain genre of board games, which I think sometimes this genre of board games doesn't quite get the attention it deserves because it's kind of niche, I guess. What I'm talking about is cooperative board games. The type of board game where you and the other players work together to try to beat the game. Now, for me, these are great. I love these because every once in a while it's nice to not have everybody at the table, pitted against each other. Sometimes it's nice to work together and try to solve a problem and beat a problem that is the game and is presented to you in the game. Here in the office where we do most of our gaming, we have a handful of these kind of games. We have Elder Sign and Runebound from Fantasy Flight Games. We have Zepocalypse, which is kind of cooperative, kind of not. It depends on what scenario you're playing and how you want to play it. Same for Level 7 from Privateer Press. It's sort of cooperative. It works better if you work together, but you can very easily screw your other players over. Touch of Evil, which that one is pretty pure cooperative. And we have Forbidden Island, which that's the game I'm going to be kind of talking about today here in a little bit. But I kind of wanted to say why I like cooperative games. It's fun to play a cooperative game, like take Elder Sign or Forbidden Island, for instance, where the game is set to beat you if you try to work independently of your other players. And it forces you to work together. And it's fun to sit at the table and talk about, well, what are we going to do? How are we going to do this? What's our plan? What's our kind of attack run, so to speak, against the game? It's kind of like making the Death Star run. You're Luke and Red Squadron, and the game is Darth Vader and Mahler Murthel, and I think that was the person, and I don't remember the other pilot. And you're trying to hit that little exhaust port, and sometimes it works out because sometimes Han comes to the rescue, and sometimes it doesn't work out, and you crash and burn, and the Rebel Alliance is destroyed. But it's fun to get that kind of interaction amongst the players. Like if you're playing Risk or the original Dust, for example, and everybody's against each other. You might have alliances that emerge, but they're alliances of necessity. Whereas in a cooperative game, you're automatically in an alliance, and it's an alliance that you kind of have to honor, because if you don't, you lose the game. Another reason I like cooperative games is you can sometimes play them quicker than a regular board game, which is nice if you don't have much time. Also, if you have new people that have never played a board game before, sometimes it's easier for them if you bring them in with a cooperative game because you can help them learn how to play and what they're doing instead of crushing them under your military might. Don't get me wrong, sometimes you have players that just don't want to cooperate and they will throw a spanner in the works every chance they get. But that's rare because after the first couple of games, they kind of figure out that that's not as much fun as if I cooperated. Now, kind of the game I want to talk about today, which is Forbidden Island, is a game that I'd seen at the local bookstore. The Witch Lord and I had seen it at the local bookstore quite a few times, and we had passed up because it just didn't look like it was something that would be up our alley. It didn't look really military side. It didn't look like science fiction. It didn't look kind of like fantasy. It was just this. And you look on the back, and nope, I had it right the first time. You look on the back, and it doesn't really explain much as to what the game is and what you do. It's by a company called GameRight, which I'd never heard of before. And really, the only reason we went on a limb and bought this is we saw it played on Tabletop. So thank you, Will Wheaton, for introducing us to a fun game. Now, the box itself is a tin. It's kind of like a cookie tin, but instead of delicious dessert cookies, there's a delicious cooperative board game inside. That's right, I call the game delicious. What are you going to do about it? Please don't eat the game if you buy it. Please don't. The packaging it's nice. It's pretty. It's pretty much your bog standard. It tells you the game name on each side, who it's by, and on the ends it tells you it's for ages 10 and up. Typical game should take you about 30 minutes, depending on your player's level of cooperation and how quickly the game kills you. And 2 to 4 players is what the game is set up for. On the back, gives you a little flavor text, kind of like, introducing you to the game. Tells you what you get. It tells you who the illustrations are by and who made the game. And then, another cool thing I want to say about this real quick is when we bought this, the cellophane around it had like a little sticker on it that said this game, I don't remember if it had won an award or it had been credited by the Mensa Society, which is the people with really high IQs that are so smart they're scary, for its team building and teamwork aspects, which I think that's just phenomenal. I think it's really cool to have the game kind of recognized like that, and to know that it is so heavy into the team building aspects. I'm just going to go over the components as I come across them in the box, because we've played this a couple times, so they're not really in there in any particular fashion. The first, and the most vile, is the water level marker. Now, basically the premise of this game is you and the other teammates are adventurers that have come to this Forbidden Island to find 4 treasures. And the whole time you're trying to find the treasures, the island's sinking. And this is what tells you how badly the island sinks. There's 3 different levels of play you can play the game at. You can start off 4. Sorry, there's 4. There's Novice, which is the beginner level, which is the best place to start if you're a beginner. There's Normal, Elite, and Legendary. Legendary is terrifying. It starts you drawing 3 flood cards, and you're only 1 little blip away from the 4 mark. The way you lose this game is if the 4 treasure tiles, there's 4 different treasures you're trying to collect, which, here, I will show you the treasures. You're trying to get the Treasure of the Wind, the Treasure of the Sea, Treasure of the Earth, and Treasure of Fire. This is the one. Don't eat this. It looks like clear rock candy, but it's not. Don't do it. But you're trying to get those 4. And the way you get those is you travel to different map tiles. And like the Cave of Embers, which it has the fire symbol, so that's one you need. There's 2 that have the fire symbol. There's 2 that have the earth symbol, 2 that have the water symbol, 2 that have the wind treasure symbol. And basically in this game, there's flood cards. And the flood cards each represent a tile. And the first time you draw a flood card, the tile floods. You can still go to it, you can still get the treasure from it, it's still there, and you can shore it up by spending an action to flip it back over. But when it's like this, if you get the dreaded card out of the treasure deck called Water's Rise, it can potentially sink. And when it sinks, it's removed from the game board and it goes away. If both of one card sink before you get that treasure, you lose the game. That's the way it works. It's that simple. It's kind of frightening, because there's only 24 of these. And in the beginning of the game, I do believe 6 to 8 of them start off flooded. I don't remember exactly which. But I'm not really here to talk about, well, kind of the rules. These are your player pieces. They're different colored little wooden pawns. Nothing spectacular, but you don't really need spectacular. The nice thing is each pawn corresponds with a different card, and each one has a different ability. Like the gray Gray is the Messenger. They can give a treasure card to a player anywhere on the island for an action, which is always nice. The Diver, that is the black pawn, can move through flooded tiles and sunken tiles for an action. So if there's 3 sunken tiles in a row, they can go from one to the other without any problem. The Explorer, which is the green pawn, it's the only one I've used in the game, because his ability is amazing. Normally in the game, you can only go, straight up and down and across. You cannot move diagonally. But if you're the Explorer, you can move diagonally, which is huge. The Engineer is the red pawn, and he can shore up 2 tiles for 1 action, which that means 2 flooded tiles he can flip over for 1 action. Again, that's huge. You have the Navigator, who's yellow, and he can move another player up to 2 adjacent tiles for 1 action. That could be useful. I've never seen this one played, but I'm not doubting the usefulness of it. And then you have the Pilot, which is the blue pawn, who once per turn can fly to any tile on the island for an action. That is huge. Because the way it works is to shore up a tile, you have to be adjacent to it. And for most, that means next to it or right below it. The Explorer, you can be diagonal to it. But the Pilot can spend 1 action to fly to a tile that needs to be shored up. And shore it up on his next action. Players get 3 actions in the game, which move as an action, shore up as an action, and collect a treasure as an action, and trade treasure cards as an action. Now, on top of the treasure tiles, the other tile, which is most important in the game, another way you can lose. There's a lot of ways you lose this game, only one way you win. Fool's Landing. If this sinks, you lose, because your ride off the island is gone. Now, like I said, there's flood cards, which these are the cards you draw during the game that tell you which part of the island is flooding. You can see that they all correspond to tiles of the island. And then you have treasure cards. The way these work is you need 4 of the same kind. So like you need 4 of the air statue to go to the air tile and collect the treasure. Or you need 4 of the water to go collect the water statue. That's pretty simple. Now, in this deck are horrible cards, which are Water's Rise. What happens when you draw this card is you reshuffle all of the discarded flood cards, and you put them on top of the flood deck. And then you draw the number of flood cards you're required to draw according to the water dial, which I have seemed to misplaced. Ta-da! And that's how things sink. Now there's other cards like the Helicopter Lift card, which this card you need to win. If you don't have this card, once you've collected all 4 treasures, you can't airlift off the island and win. That sucks. There is also the one other card that's not treasure, is Sandbags. This card is great, because this card lets you shore up 1 island token anywhere on the board for free. It's a great card. Helicopter Lift also, you can move 1 or more pawns on the same tile to any other tile, which is good, but I've always seen it, we always tend to save that for the end game, for the, we need to get out of here. Now, I've already talked about if the treasure tiles sink, you lose. Okay. Fool's Landing sinks, you lose. If you happen to, even if you happen to get all the treasures, but not all of your teammates can make it back to Fool's Landing, you lose. You don't leave a man behind in this game. And lastly, you can lose if the waters rise all the way up to the Skull and Crossbones level. If you manage to get to the Skull and Crossbones level, once again, you lose. The only way to win the game is as working as a team, collecting all 4 of the treasures, and being able to get all of your players back to Fool's Landing, and having an airlift card to get you off the island. It's a very specific win condition. It's not easy to achieve. I've played the game 3 times now. Once with the Lich Lord and myself, we won. Once with my dad and myself, we lost. The island beat us. And once with my dad, another one of our gaming group, and myself, and we did win. The way the island is put together is completely random. You lay the tiles out in a square with 2 and 2 on each side at the end, which makes it completely random. You don't really know what you're going to get, where things are going to go. You can really, really get screwed by the placement of the tiles. The other thing I should mention about the tiles is each pawn has a tile they start on. Whichever tile your pawn's color is on is where you start. So you don't all start together. And the thing I think is just great with this game is as you're playing it, you really have to talk to each other, and you have to decide how you're going to go about, like, who's going to go where to shore up tiles to make sure that you can all make it back to Fool's Landing. Or who's going to make the runs for the treasure. You know, even in the beginning of the game, you have to think about how you're going to comprise your team. It's great to have the Explorer on board because he can move diagonally. It's good to have the Messenger because he can, shift cards around. It's nice to have the Diver because he can be a guy that makes the Hail Mary runs for a treasure, because even if the tiles between him and Fool's Landing sink, he can still make it back because he can swim through. And it's all kinds of the little things that you have to think about while never knowing when parts of the island are going to sink, when they're going to flood, that make it really interesting. It's tense at times because you just hit this point where you're not really sure how it's going to play out. You, of course, want to win, but you might not. And to me, that makes the game really interesting, really fun. Like I said, this is Forbidden Island, and it's one of my favorite cooperative games. I really do enjoy Touch of Evil and the other ones. This one's fun because you can play it quickly. You can get 2 or 3 games of this in a night, and each one's different. It's changing all the time. I would suggest if you like cooperative games, or you're looking to try a cooperative game, this is a good first, like, I guess, immersion in the cooperative board game world. Unlike Pandemic, which I've never played, but I've heard that that's just mind-numbingly hard to win, and I want to play it. I think it looks fantastic. I want to play it in the expansion. It looks like it's a brilliant game. But sometimes it's nice to play a game where you have an idea that you're going to win with your friends. And afterwards, you all get to feel like winners together, and nobody gets to sit in the loser's corner. So that's kind of it for me. I just kind of wanted to talk about some cooperative board gaming and why I like it, why every once in a while I think it's great to break up your game night with cooperative gaming. And I kind of wanted to bring you a little bit of a look at what is in Forbidden Island, kind of how it plays, and why I think it's a good game, and why, if you have the time and the inclination, why not pick it up and give it a shot? After all, you can say you've played a game that's approved by Mensa, approved by the High IQ Society. But I think that's going to be it for this episode of Board Game Banter. I hope you guys liked it. If you like what we're doing here, give us a subscribe. It's always nice to get new people in watching our videos. A like is always great. We love seeing thumbs up. Comments are great. We try to reply when you guys leave comments. If we see them. Sometimes we don't see them. Messages are good. We can, we'll message you back and can discuss things. We like interaction with you guys. So that's going to be it. It's gaming night here at the office. We're going to be playing some Iron Kingdoms roleplay, I think. It's up in the air. Never know, maybe we'll play some Forbidden Island. But we'll see you next time here at Bullshit Games.